Hey, welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. My name is Kristen Hill, and we are so excited that you're tuning in today. Our prayer is that you would move one step closer to Jesus through this series. So go ahead and check out this next episode. Hey, Strong Roots, we are in our season called 7 Habits to Become the Best Version of Yourself, and I'm here with Blair. And the habit that she's going to be talking about today is kindness. And this is a result of following Jesus. He calls us to be kind. He calls us to be loving. And I think this is something that Blair naturally is. This is something that he has gifted you in being. But I also know it's something that she strives and works hard to pursue Christ in this way.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to ask you questions today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for asking me to be on the podcast. I'm so excited.
Anyone who knows you was like, yes, of course, Blair, kindness. So Blair, saying that, why is kindness such an important habit of a highly effective person?
So first I want to define what kindness is, and I have it here. Kindness is the quality of being friendly, generous, and considerate. It's also a warm-hearted nature, which I think is so great. So that's a definition of kindness. And I want to also define what being an effective Christian is if we're effective, one, we're loving God, and two, we're loving people.
Yeah.
And so how does kindness fit into that is, like, kindness is such a rare gem, I think, in society right now. There's just not a lot of true, like, warm-hearted, calm-natured people that are considerate, that are generous and kind and genuine. And I think that kindness can be really charismatic, and it can really draw people into not only wanting to know you, but it's the quality of Jesus in us that draws people in. And that's what is really charismatic about kindness, is it's really just Jesus in me or in you. And so I think that's, by being kind, we can show people the love of God in a way that leads us to be an effective Christian by loving God and loving people. And so I think that's how really I would define kindness, and how being effective in kindness is really just loving people, loving them well, being considerate and affectionate and kind. And so that's how I would say kindness relates to being an effective Christian.
So how do you show value to everyone, specifically because everyone is created in God's image?
Right. I think that's really hard to do. I think to give value to other people, I have to realize that I'm not that great myself. And I think when I put myself on a pedestal, I start to think, well, that person's not as valuable as me or as somebody else. And when I realize that I am just as bad as everybody else, that I need Jesus just as much as everybody else in this world, then I can add value to their life. I want to see them come to know God. I want to see them better themselves. I want to see them grow in the qualities of Jesus that will have them live a better life and to love God more. And so I think to value other people, I need to also kind of bring myself down to a level of, I'm not that great myself. Like, I don't need to think of myself so highly that I forget that I need Jesus just as much as everybody else does.
Absolutely. So how do you remind yourself of that?
Yeah.
Is there a habit, or is there a practice?
Humility. I think it's asking Jesus to reveal in me the things that aren't so great. And that takes a lot of vulnerability in yourself and asking someone else, hey, what do you see in me that isn't so great? Right. And that's hard too. Asking how to improve yourself. Do you see any things that aren't kind and considerate in me? Have you seen a way that I've treated you poorly this week, especially people in your family or people close to you? And not getting mad at them when they're honest. And they say, you hurt me in this way. So I think humility, vulnerability, and asking people closest to you, how have I hurt you this week? Or have I been kind this week to you at all?
How do you be kind to somebody who is not kind to you or has totally wronged you, or you'd put them in you're kind of an enemy? How do you be effective and be kind to somebody like that? Yeah,
I think it's not necessarily convincing them that they're wrong, because I think that's something I want to do is, like, I want to show you that you're wrong, and I want to show you how you hurt me. And it's not convincing them that their beliefs are wrong or that they're wrong. It's about being kind to them and loving them despite what they're doing.
Right.
And that's the hardest part, is sometimes you're not going to get an apology, and you're not going to get, I want you to ask for forgiveness. You might not get that. And it's choosing to love them despite what they're doing, and be kind to them, because Jesus is kind to us despite what we do. Jesus is kind to us despite how we treat him, or how we forget about him, or how we don't love him in ways, and completely disregard God sometimes. And so I think it's the heart of God in us, and asking God to pour out his love and his kindness through us to other people when they're not being the kindest or
extra credit.
Or our enemy.
Yes. So can you give a specific example? And not put names. If it's your husband, he wouldn't mind. But is there a specific example or even vague example you could give? Because I feel like just getting real and being like, here's a moment where somebody really hurt me, and this is how God in me reacted.
So I think recently, and I think to switch it, I was the enemy in this story.
Yeah.
My sister is wonderful and so kind, and we were on the phone and we were having this conversation, and I instantly was like, well, I'm going to tell her how she did wrong and should be a better leader and should be a better whatever. And thinking that I was better, I started talking to her in a way that was unkind and was not necessary, and it was not true. And as I was saying these things, like, she started to cry on the phone. She was really hurt, and she hung up. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I don't treat anyone in my life like that. How could I treat my own sister like that? Like, I instantly felt bad. And so I called her, and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I talked to you in a way that I would not talk to anyone else. And it's only because you're my sister, and I feel so comfortable with you that I talked to you that way, but that's not an excuse for how I treated you. And so I think the kindness that I want to be kind in my life, and I know and recognize that was not kind. And so I have to ask myself frequently, what is true, and like, am I saying is true? Is it kind, and is it necessary? And everything that I'd said in that conversation was not true, kind, or necessary. And so those are the three questions that I frequently ask myself, especially when you are talking with someone that you might disagree with. It might be true, but it might not be necessary. It might be, it could be kind, even if you're like talking to someone trying to get their favor. Like, it could be kind, but it might not be true. Like, and I think speaking and thinking of our words in a way, with those three questions has really helped me grow in a lot of situations where it showed me my wrong.
Right. Yeah. Those three questions are valuable.
Yeah.
And I feel like kindness goes a long way, especially when you are confronting somebody.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, a lot of us feel awkward doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you are kind, no matter if you butcher it or stammer or stumble, it is a blanket.
Yeah.
That just kind of paves the way for their heart to receive whatever you're trying to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that conflict with my sister, it helped me realize that I need to focus again on my words. Like, not only does it happen, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing so well, I'm so kind, like, I'm great with conflict, and then those things come up, and you're like, wow, I'm really not that great, and I need to rethink and go back to my basics, like, of thinking through conversations with those three questions.
I love that. So how do you guard against being rude?
Know my sin patterns. So I have a list of things that I notice that when those things start to come up, I need to start praying and confessing. So I start lashing out. I have rude comments, passive aggressive, that sarcasm that's you're saying it's sarcastic, but it's actually true, but it's rooted in bitterness, and it's like, nope, just stop that right there. That you're not being kind, and what you're saying, like, it's coming from a heart of bitterness, and it's not loving. And so those sighing words under my breath, Zachary will be like, Blair, there's something wrong because you keep saying things under your breath. Dang it. And so in that moment, when I recognize that I'm not being kind, I will pray and ask Jesus to reveal my heart. And
Right.
usually it's not a good heart. And then I confess, and it's usually to Zachary. And I think the situation with my sister, I voice messaged you and I was like, hey, Kristen, I need to confess something.
Yes.
Just so that I have accountability in those areas. And it makes me want to be better. It makes me want to pursue Jesus, especially when I go to Jesus and have to be like, hey, God, I talked to one of your kids in an unloving way. Like, that hurts my heart because,
Right.
of course, Jesus would not talk to them in that way or in that tone. And so focusing on my speech and how I say things has been really important.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know you have some questions for me now.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask
Yes.
away?
Yeah, so my first question is, what was your biggest obstacle in growing in kindness?
Pride.
Yeah, same.
I think specifically thinking that it's always the other person's fault. Like just totally the parable of the speck in the log, like refusing to see the log in my eye and literally taking a magnifying glass and making the speck big. And I feel like that's something that has followed me into my walk with Christ that I still wrestle with. And still, when I am being unkind to someone, it is because I am refusing to see my part in it. Always. That is the root. And I think I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was.
Yeah.
And I love that through my pride, God's like, and humbled. Because I sin. Like, when I do that, I always sin. And then I have to repent. And,
True.
and that just makes you humble too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and asking the question, where do you want this relationship? What do you want this relationship to look like after this conflict or conversation?
Absolutely.
It's good.
It's worth fighting for.
True.
Mm-hmm.
And then my second question is, how has God's kindness affected the way you live your life?
Every part of my life. I feel like I could cry just how kind he's been to me and how awful of a person I know I still am.
Yeah.
Like, yes, who I was, but yes, who I still am. And just the way he meets me in my darkest times and darkest places and darkest thoughts and loves me. I don't think I've ever felt God say, how could you? Like, that's one of my favorite parts about our God and Jesus is he's always right there. And he's always wanting and to pick you up and show you his kindness. He leads the way in kindness. And that is I think the overflow of that is me wanting to show that to other people. But if it wasn't for his model, there's no way that I would show other people. If only people that I liked, only people who were good to me, would I show any remote goodness towards them. But through Christ, he allows us to do that. Would you agree?
That's so good. Couldn't agree more.
Yes.
So beautifully said, too. Making me want to cry.
It's just, Jesus is so good to us. So thank you, Blair.
Yeah,
This was such a privilege.
Yeah.
And thank you, Strong Roots, so much for joining us today. I cannot wait to catch you next time. Bye. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on our other social media platforms. We don't want you to miss out on any future content. Thank you so much again, guys. I hope you have a great day. And I want you to know I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.